Sometimes I don't feel like we recognize how big of a difference imposter syndrome, self-consciousness, and insecurity makes in our lives, and especially as we're trying to help other people, as we're trying to impact the world or the people around us. And we think that we are going to get better. It's just going to go away as we do more and more of the thing. Maybe it's speaking or coaching or teaching, anything like that. And we say, I'm just going to dive into it. But it tends not to go away sometimes. And sometimes it's just like we're okay and it's not a big deal. So I want to talk about that a little bit. If you are struggling to create something that you really want to create, if you are blocking yourself and standing in your own way, you're just kind of tired of it. You're hitting your head against a wall. You know you want to do it. Maybe it's that thing that you've set a New Year's resolution for every single year and you always fall off. Insecurity and imposter syndrome might be your issue. Today, we're going to be talking about that with my guest, Rebecca Gage. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Rebecca is a coach that I met through, it was Awaken Your Impact, which was a 3-day event. And if you haven't heard of the previous episode, she's awesome. Okay. She is a femininity coach. She helps women to make it so that they're not being conflicted with their own femininity as they're trying to create these successful businesses or this successful impact on the world. And she was telling me a little bit, even coaches struggle with imposter syndrome. So we're going to be exploring that topic today. And definitely listen to this episode if it's something that you struggle with. So, Rebecca, tell us a little bit about what's going on for you. When does it crop up for you?
Um, you know, Imposter syndrome is something that I feel like has plagued me for a very long
Mhm.
time. And it seemed like even no matter how successful I get, there's still this little teeny thread of, well, what if they discover that I'm fill in the blank, right? It doesn't matter what. It's always just this thing of it's this constant theme that feels like, it is always there no matter how
Mm.
successful I become, no matter how good at said subject I become. I'm still worried that somehow someone is going to pull back this curtain and realize she's a fraud. She's
Mm.
this, she's a that or whatever. So I feel like it's kind of kind of an issue.
Yeah, yeah. Tends to slow us down. It tends to block us from taking action and from really authentically expressing ourselves.
Mhm, mhm.
If this is your first time listening, my name is Rich Life, and this is the Rich Life Realization Podcast, where your vibrant life is a single thought away. So we'll kind of be exploring this idea that we think in our heads, okay, if I get enough experience, if I get amazing enough at this, then the imposter syndrome is going to go away. And there's an issue with that. There's two issues. So the first issue is like when you have imposter syndrome, it's going to prevent you from getting that experience. You're not going to get the at bats needed to become a really incredible player to hit the home runs that you need to hit. And the second issue, and this is the one that Rebecca was just talking about, is that it doesn't even seem to matter. you can become amazing, or you can become, I'm so successful. And yet there's this little voice, this little expression that says, oh, but that's only because they don't know. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, that is so true that, um, you know, it robs you in the beginning of taking those chances,
Mm-hmm.
getting the practice in that you need to actually become good at the thing that you're trying to become good at. But then it also, you know, it's this constant uh static.
Ooh.
It's this constant static that no matter how how high up you get or how successful you become or how good you get, again, at said subject, it's this just constant static that never seems to go away.
Mm.
And it's interesting because, you know, it's somewhat insidious and somewhat it can kind of disguise itself. I see it show up for me in ways of, you know, well, I have to put out a perfect product,
Mm.
right? Because
Perfectionism.
so it shows up as perfectionism or it
Mm-hmm.
shows up as you know, wanting there's a difference between wanting um to show up as your best versus having to be the best,
Mm.
right? So sometimes we can look at that and say, oh, well, that's a good thing, right? So sometimes for me, it plays out in ways that seems almost hard to recognize that I'm dealing with imposter syndrome. But, you know, I want to really show up as my extraordinary self, but that's more of who I am, not necessarily an outcome,
Yeah.
right? So it's this hum, it's this kind of buzz that never seems to leave. And it's hard to sometimes identify because, you know, it's like disguised as something that is actually good, right? Well, it's good to want
Mm-hmm.
to be perfect. It's good to want to excel, you know? So,
Mm. And the other part too is that when we confuse that the outcome with being our authentic selves, when we combine those two, that's really painful because
mhm,
people can reject us, or we can feel like they're rejecting us as a person, not the outcome of our whatever it is we're trying to share or create.
mhm,
So that's one of the most insidious things is that it tries to combine those two things,
mhm,
who we are and what we're doing, and how we're doing, really, who we are and how we're doing.
mhm,
And those two things are two different things. And you can have different judgments and thoughts about both, really. You can be like, but they're separate. So it's kind of interesting. You can be like, I'm okay, but I'm not doing so hot right now as far as what I'm trying to accomplish. And that's okay. What are you hearing in that so far?
I mean, it takes, you know, some practice to get to that point to be able to separate the two of those,
Mm.
right? To understand that who you are is different from your performance, you know. And it's just uh, you know, it can be so challenging, I think, because I just don't know. I don't know why this imposter syndrome can be such this, because we think that, if we show up in this way and we perform at this level and we do this thing this certain way, so that, again, it's a lot of times has to be the person on the receiving end, how they respond to us. And we're trying, this imposter syndrome is we're trying to avoid them not liking us, them not rejecting us, them not discovering something about us that they wouldn't like. And what's so interesting about this whole topic is that the truth is that it's actually the opposite. When people really know the real you and they get to see the real you, yes, there might be some people that don't like it, but the majority of the people will, it's like an invitation in, right? It's almost like this opening that, we think that imposter syndrome keeps us protected somehow.
Yeah.
And the reality is that when that barrier is gone, it allows people in even more. And so, it's just this sneaky thing that is so subtle. We think that, we're protecting ourselves, or we're protecting, our identity or whatever. And it's actually a barrier. And it actually keeps you from probably getting what you want fast. You could probably get there faster if we let that down, and if we allowed people really in.
Yeah.
These preconceived notions.
That's cool to see. That feels like some wisdom to me. So this, I'm gonna kind of let the cat out of the bag. This is the secret to why your imposter syndrome persists even when you get better at something, is that because it's not connected to the outcome. Even though we think it is not connected to the outcome. It is 100% created from thought. So that's actually really good news, because thought is not a real thing. It is a mental energy. It is a mental expression. Now, the thing that is so challenging about this is that we have this consciousness that makes real our thinking. In a full experience, it gives you feeling, emotion. So imposter syndrome, it hurts, doesn't it?
Right. It feels very real.
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason that it feels so real is because of the power and the nature of our consciousness. And we can get lost in it, because when we get into this feeling of it, it kind of narrows our vision. It brings it close to us. And we can't distance ourselves, or we have a hard time distancing ourselves. And it's incredible. Like the power of our consciousness, incredible. It's just like, it is the FX department. It is the full show. It's just like, and it creates for you a temporary reality. So if you know that, And it uses, so what does it use to create that temporary reality? It uses your thoughts in the moment. It's responding to your thoughts. Each thought comes with a feeling. And when you see how this operates, well, you still might get lost in it, but you understand how it works. Because the other nice thing, the other interesting thing, is that if we're not holding on to thoughts, they will dissolve. And we will get a new experience in moments. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor said that it only takes about 90 seconds for an emotion to go through your body all the way through. But a lot of people are saying, well, Rich and Rebecca, I've been feeling emotions for hours and maybe even months. So what's the deal with that? We can hold on to our thinking. We have this ability to grasp, to continue to make it real. It's almost a response to the consciousness working that makes it feel real, and we're like, oh man, that must be really real. I need to hold on to this. I need to keep this. This is important. These thoughts about me not being good enough, or about other people discovering that I kind of don't know what I'm doing. Especially when I'm trying something hard.
Mhm.
That those thoughts are thoughts that we hold on to. So this is kind of the cool, like, good news, is that holding on to them requires us to use energy. Now, a lot of the times we don't realize that we're holding. We can't tell. But it is using energy. And why do you think you're so exhausted? Mentally, psychologically exhausted. You've been grasping onto thinking for hours, days, maybe months. And that is tiring. And especially the other thing that people don't know is that, oh my gosh, this thinking that I'm holding on to is hurting me. And when we truly realize, oh wow, it's the thoughts that are hurting me, we can let go. And it's not an act. It's not like, I'm going to let go now. I'm going to finally drop it. It's a,
Yeah, release, relief.
yeah, yeah. It is a relaxing back into presence.
That's
I want to hear what your thoughts are, what your insights are right now in this moment.
I love relaxing back into, what did you say? Relaxing back into?
Relaxing back into presence. It feels like I kind of like liken it to like just like dropping into this hot bath, that there's just this like, oh,
Yes.
this.
I mean, that just feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's so interesting again that we hold on to these things that we think are protecting us, and we think are doing
Yes.
us a service, and we think are keeping us in a safe place, when in reality it's holding us back.
Mm-hmm.
That I keep thinking is like, when I hear someone else share their struggles, especially in hard things, especially in the beginning, especially when they're trying so hard, when I hear, that they don't know what they're doing. When you said that statement, it was like, oh, oh, like, neither do I. Can we talk about
Me too.
it's like this connection that happens.
Mm,
We're in this imposter syndrome because we think that it's keeping us and it's allowing us to create the success or that rich life that we desire, when
mhm,
in reality, it is keeping us from that rich life.
mhm,
It is that, coming up against, or that constant static, that feeling like, why am I so exhausted? I have such a good life. Why do I feel like this? Why am I struggling with addiction? Why am I struggling with insomnia? Why am I having health problems? Why is my relationships falling? Why am I having financial struggle? It's not always like tied directly to this, but again, we think that, you know, if we if we stand in this persona of what we think is success, then we think it's going to come quicker, when in reality, it's owning where we actually are,
mhm,
right? And I talk with my clients a lot about, um I don't want you to tie yourself to your emotions, but I want you to allow them to move through, right? So if
mhm,
we're in this constant place of warring against our emotions and feeling like, whatever emotions are tied with imposter syndrome, feeling maybe sad or somewhat depressed, or things of that nature, when we're just fighting against that and we're just warring against that, and like, oh, I
mhm.
can't feel that way because successful people don't feel this way, or having a rich life means I don't feel this. That is counterproductive,
Yeah, it
and
creates more noise,
it
more
creates,
static.
yes, it creates more of that you're trying to get away from. So I love that you just said that we can just, you know, again, I forgot again what the way you said it. I just loved it so much. I need to write.
Relaxing back into presence.
Yeah, so just relaxing back into presence, and that allows you to experience more of the things that you want to experience, which is, contribution, connection, all of those types of things. And when we're attached to this outcome, a lot of times it attaches us to that those thoughts, like you said, those emotions, and that imposter syndrome.
Mhm. You know, a lot of my work with clients is helping them realize where they're holding.
Mm.
And that's what I'm always asking myself, because we do it unconsciously all of the time. And then helping them see that it's not a good idea to hold on to what is hurting you, what is blocking you, what is standing in your way, because you are standing in your own way when you are using those thoughts against yourself innocently. You're not meaning to, but the power of your thought system and the power of your consciousness makes it go, and it makes it feel, oh, this is important, I need to keep this.
This feels really real.
Yeah. Oh. And me too. Me too. I even now, even when I understand some of these things, it is so human to get lost in this. But you can very, very easily find yourself again. In fact, it's not even hard at all. You just have to stop holding on. You
Mm.
just have to stop using your energy in that way, using your mind in that way. And sometimes it's a habit. I'm habitually using my mind to hurt myself. When I see that, and not see it intellectually, but when I see it from that space of knowing, well, I'm going to drop it. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. It's just like dropping a hot something hot on the stove. You're like, oh, that was really hot. Oh, okay. You don't have to come up with techniques or different ways of dropping all of the different emotions. You just have to see that it's hurting you and see that you're doing it innocently using the power of your own thinking and the power of your own consciousness. And then you're free. You'll relax back into presence sooner and sooner, especially when you understand how imposter syndrome is working and showing up in your life. Mhm.
Yeah, this is good for sure. This is very important to understand.
Mhm.
The thing that comes to mind for me, and when you're talking about all of this, is, what I do with clients is what's called shadow work.
Mhm.
Again, I love that you said that there's not you don't have to find a technique. You can simply let it go. There's a
Mhm.
lot in that. But a lot of times what I do, in helping my clients is to understand some of the characteristics about themselves, the parts that they sort of dismiss or they don't like about themselves, the fact that maybe you're selfish, or the fact that maybe you're bitchy, or the fact that you're there's a lot of things that we have in ourselves that often, we're trying to push back. We're trying to not let it come to the forefront, right? We put
Mhm.
them in the background. And what's interesting about this type of shadow work is that when you look at these said characteristics in a different way, well, it's what's good about being selfish. Well, sometimes selfish is important because it keeps you alive. It, makes it ensures that you get fed. It does these different things. And it reminds me of that,
Mhm.
when you're working with some of these things, the thing that you think is your biggest setback or your biggest detriment is often the thing that will propel you forward the most. And even if you think of it in that way and learn to reframe this these ideas around imposter syndrome, then there's that letting go.
Mhm.
It doesn't have this grip on your life. It doesn't have this hold that it once did, keeping you from taking action or keeping you from stepping into what you're created for.
Mhm. And especially with imposter syndrome, just like you were talking about how it's actually that vulnerability, that that thought of, I don't know what I'm really doing right now, that connects you with other people. And if you can be vulnerable and you can share with that and you can own that, then there's nothing to hide. You don't have to use your energy keeping this at bay and pushing all of your clutter into the closet and locking it
Mhm.
and just saying, don't look over there. Oh, that person's looking over there. I need you to go over here. We need to redirect.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Just think about how much energy we use and we expend to keep that. That's where the exhaustion comes into play.
Mhm.
It's where that psychological and physical exhaustion come into play, where, you know, because you're spinning your wheels trying to keep all of this closed tight, trying to keep this neat and tidy perimeter, right? And this neat and tidy persona, this thing that you're trying to give off, when in reality, if you let all of that down, if you just let go,
Mm.
probably be surprised at the things that come and the connections that happen and the richness of life that becomes available to you.
Yeah.
It was always there. It's just that because you were so that was going just, you know, that you weren't aware.
Mhm. Yeah. You can miss it. It's right under your nose.
Mm.
And I love that you talk about how the noise is creating that static that's taking you away. And that clarity, your clarity, your wisdom, your connection is always present.
Mm.
You are just taking yourself away from it. It
Mm.
is not leaving you.
Oh, true. So good. Very.
So that's great.
Mm.
If you know that, then you can, sometimes it's wait a little while and let the thoughts dissolve. Sometimes it's looking in a new direction. Your thinking, your thought system is designed to give you fresh new thoughts, as long as you're not holding on. And that's cool. That's kind of like what you were talking about. When you have space, new and fresh can come through.
Mm.
And that will be impactful for you and for clients and for the people that you care about in your entire life. Mm. Cool. Well, let's maybe end with, how is imposter syndrome looking now? What's new and fresh for you after we've had this conversation about imposter syndrome?
I think the biggest thing for me is just, again, understanding that it's that openness and it's that vulnerability that really is that bridge. The thing that, you know, I think is harming me or hurting me or keeping me, like, why would someone work with me as a coach? Or why would someone hire me as a speaker? Or why would someone buy my book? These are all instances where I have, you know, a lot of imposter syndrome. The reality is, you know, when I am able to really show up as me and stand in my power and my truth, that's when that's when, you know, things really start to happen. That's when I can just let go of this imposter syndrome. When I'm open and I say, you know, the one of the biggest things when I first started out in my coaching practice, I was so concerned with imposter syndrome. Why would people want to work with me? Because I don't have this coaching certificate, or I don't have this, I didn't go to school for, I don't have a psychology degree, or whatever else, right? It was all these reasons why. And I tried to maintain this persona of success or whatever. And it was honestly when I just shared my story,
Mm.
and when I opened up and I let people in and I said, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm supposed to be doing this.
Mm.
And all of a sudden they're like, we want to work with you. I want to work with you. And so It's just such a good reminder for me. I really appreciate this today, Rich, so much. This has been really, really good for me to even go through again, to remind myself that it is in that vulnerability
Mm,
that some people won't want it and other people will.
yeah.
And that's when I don't have to expend all of this energy trying to keep this buzz at bay, when I can just relax back into presence.
Mhm. I liked your description of being open, and it also reminds me of kind of like they use sometimes a metaphor in the principles about a fist.
Mhm.
And if you have a closed fist, there's two things that are going to happen. It's not going to feel very good over time. You're going to feel a pressure. It's going to start cramping. And the other issue is I can't use this for
Mm,
very much. I can't eat cereal with it or pet a dog with it. I can punch, and you're hurting you when you are closing up in your mind, you you're using it to hurt yourself.
mm,
And when you open, you can use it for so many different things.
mm,
It becomes this incredible tool that naturally it can play an instrument, or it can whistle, it can now pet a dog. And the same is true with our minds. When we're holding on, when we're creating pressure, it will tell us, using pain, using pressure, using urgency, and then we can hear that signal and say, oh, okay. Oh, I was holding on. I didn't even know. I didn't even know. And now I can let go.
I
And
was
like you said, then you can be connected with the people you care about, with your clients, and especially with yourself.
Mhm. Yes.
Cool. Rebecca, it was such a pleasure having you on the Rich Life Realization podcast. If I don't ask for a lot, I'm not gonna put any sponsorships on here or have any commercials. Maybe I'll do a like three principles commercial, or like, have you been using your thoughts to hurt yourself? But well, I would just, it would light up my world if you would share this with somebody, and share Rebecca too. Rebecca, if people hear this and they hear your vulnerability, how can they reach you?
Yes, thank you, Rich. So you can find me on all the social media platforms. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rebecca Gage. You can also head to my website, RebeccaGage.com. I have a freebie there, a guided visualization. If you feel like you're struggling with kind of what you're supposed to be doing or where the direction of your life is headed, this guided visualization can really help you step into and start to think about, this, start to dream in this realm of potentiality, not reality.
Mhm.
Um, so definitely grab that freebie if that's something that you're interested in.
Cool. Your vibrant life is a single thought away. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich.